Welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast. This is author and athlete Brad Kearns discovering ways to be healthy, fit, and happy in hectic, high-stress modern life. So let's slow down and take a deep breath, take a cold plunge, and expertly balance that competitive intensity with an appreciation of the journey. That's the theme of the show. Here we go. The Get Over Yourself podcast is brought to you by Almost Heaven, beautiful compact home use sauna kits, ancestral supplements, grass-fed organ meats in a capsule, DNA Fit, genetic testing for custom diet and exercise recommendations, Integro Health, high-potency liquid probiotic called Flourish, Organifi, organic powdered superfoods, delicious green, gold, and red powders, Wild Idea Buffalo, sustainable, grass-fed, beyond organic, and check out the bradkearns.com/shop page. That's my personal selection of favorite products for health, fitness, and peak performance. And here we go with the show.
You know, if I meet somebody and I shake their hand and I say, God, you know, you're really small hands for a man. Did you notice they're like a woman's hand? What's the function of that? Why didn't I keep that to myself? Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean to make a demeaning remark to you, and if you don't push back with my what a big nose, then basically I've ceded that territory and said, I'm going to allow you to talk to me that way. Values are dynamic. They're a living entity with which we have a relationship. And that living entity needs to be fed or it dies. Financial success is like a shovel. It's like a shovel that you use to hoe a garden, and then you grow tomatoes, and then those tomatoes grow, and then you make a sauce. You know, you make a marinara. And then you invite friends and family over, and you have a big, wonderful dinner and have a little wine and great conversation. Well, the shovel is a tool. Right now, we're spending a lot of time polishing the shovel. It's a fetishism of the tool that gets you to what you want to get.
Let's talk about probiotics from Integro Health. Do you want me to sing the messages? Nah. But probiotics are an extremely important concept. Hopefully you're all in on the values, the benefits of nourishing a healthy gut microbiome so you can flourish in life. And that's the name of Integro's product, Flourish, a unique, extremely potent, living liquid probiotic. Yes, it's liquid form. How is it different from other probiotics we usually see in pills? This is the message from Integro. Microbes continue to thrive and metabolize in their own milieu. Do you like when companies use the word milieu to describe their product? I do. These include short-chain fatty acids, bioactive peptides, amino acids, enzymes, and minerals. The liquid base makes it acid stable, so microbes can survive the stomach environment and transit to the lower GI tract for integration to give you a healthy gut microbiome. There's 11 different strains in this thing, carefully hand-cultivated in the laboratory with precision to deliver 8 billion total CFU. Why take probiotics? Come on, you have to ask. It's going to strengthen your immune function, reduce systemic inflammation, the root cause of all disease, improve digestion, promote bowel regularity, relieve gas and bloating, get you going again after illness or antibiotic use. That's me, because I first got this shipment the very day I returned home from a Mexican vacation and had a stomach illness once again. What a bummer. So sad, because I love going down south, but I needed to repair and return to action quickly. So I started guzzling this stuff and had a wonderful return to health. I'm a very enthusiastic user and will be over the long run because I need all the help I can get. I don't know about you. When we're talking about our routine usage of antibiotics, the stress we put on our system and in the environment every single day, I especially notice my gut health is compromised when I engage in overly intensive athletic training, have trouble recovering. My gut is the first thing to go. So this is my go-to product, the Flourish probiotic in liquid form. Try it yourself. I love the delicious root beer float flavor. Just kidding, man. This stuff is no funny business. This is the real deal. It's very potent. It tastes fine. It goes down okay, but no root beer float flavor. Sorry. Take it. You'll love it. Go look at integrohealth.com for more information and to order shipped directly to your door in its unique liquid form. Flourish! Oh, peoples, get ready for one of the wildest, wackiest, and deepest shows I've ever done, featuring Luke Shanahan. Oh my gosh, we get started right out of the gate with his hilarious freestyle rap account of a mythical entrepreneurial journey, poking fun at the over-glamorizing of the entrepreneur concept. So be advised that his starting point is a little bit, and then he finally breaks out of the bit, and we get into some really thoughtful and interesting topics. Oh my goodness. This show will spin in your head for a while after you play it. I promise you. Luke is the writing partner, husband of Dr. Cate Shanahan. They wrote the best-selling book, Deep Nutrition, Food Rules, many other great productions from the Dream Team. And he is quite an accomplished Renaissance man, having interests such as culinary skills. We had his fabulous dinner, and he has a background teaching and deep into the culinary arts. He's also taught writing and is a long-time writer, including an accomplished career as a ghostwriter, which is an interesting concept, being that you work hard, you put your blood, sweat, and tears onto the page, and someone else gets credit for it, kind of, sort of. So he actually talks about that concept as, I would say, the centerpiece of the show. That fine line, that balance that we walk between the high-minded ideals that we often hear from successful people about, my main goal is just to be in service to the community and the world. And so that's what drives me with my intentional beliefs and behavior every day. It's just wonderful. And then what about looking out for yourself and advocating for yourself and being selfish with your time, your energy, and even your career pursuits? Of course, going to either extreme is unadvisable. And Luke talks about some reflections, misgivings, having gone deep into the ghostwriting scene and left himself on the sideline accordingly, and visions for the future to plot and honor his own passions and pursuing the highest expression of his talents. So, wow, it's a wild ride. Really interesting, funny guy. And that's one of my favorite parts about talking with Luke, is you always get that humor injection, that lightheartedness, but deep down, a really important message. I don't know how else I can tee this thing up except for to have you hold on to the bar in front of you on the roller coaster and strap in on the seatbelt, going to town. From his home in Connecticut, Luke Shanahan. Title of the show, What is the Function of fill in the blank? The assorted thoughts and behaviors that you engage in everyday life. You can always ask yourself that question and deliver great value in the process. What is the function? What is the function of listening to the show? It's freaking awesome and funny and hilarious, and it will get you thinking and reflecting. So there you go. Enjoy. Luke Shanahan, bringing the heat. We've been going at it since I arrived here almost, 20 hours ago.
Yeah.
So I finally said, hey, let's push record and get into this.
Let's get this on some vinyl.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Picking up our wonderful email exchanges of months ago, talking about entrepreneurism and the glorification of this word and how some of it's become a little bit ridiculous.
Right. Like, well, I'm supposed to be here right now in a typical podcast telling you how it hit me one day like a lightning bolt that I was going to do this protein bar that's different than anyone else's. It's sourced from, an indigenous protected source, from a very rare cocoa bean that's it's pink striped cocoa bean that's known to have fantastic medicinal and physical properties that are, and it just took off.
You have a patent. You have a patent on that, so no one else can do it.
Yes, we grabbed.
Is it available elsewhere or just your website?
It started on the website, and within 4 days, we were moving $1 million of product a month. Within 4, this is averaging it out. Within 4 days, it crashed the internet. And it's just, it hit me, and we got a couple of angel investors on board. And
listeners, if you don't know yet, we're totally kidding.
We're just making this up.
we're getting to some important points.
Yeah.
Okay, back to, so I was flying on your private jet over to your remote plant on the East Coast.
I didn't have the jet at that time, right? I didn't have, back then, and the thing is, it was just a few buddies, and we just got together and we're like, let's just do it. And so, like I said, so we started the company, and then when that took about a week, we grabbed that patent. I hooked up with some distributors, a packager, and then and then sourced from these Guatemalan cocoa beans, and now we're getting some from Africa. There's a guy in China who's growing specifically for us a new genetic, but within a week, it's just so it's overnight. And this is my fourth company, as you know. The other three I sold a tremendous. I don't want to say how much.
It's not important, but
yeah. So this is the typical. It
doesn't really matter at all what you sold those three previous companies for.
Who cares? Yeah. It's all about the money. So the idea is,
most of that money's in a blind trust, right? So it's just sustaining your. How many homes do you have? Yeah.
You know what? I'm paring down. I had 22 houses, which is nuts. People are like, Johnny Depp's got like 40 houses, and I'm like, back then I was like, why would you want 40? And the next thing I know, I have 22 houses. Look at me, big goof. So I'm paring down. I got maybe 10 houses. Let's see, 10. One's being sold, so let's say 9.5. But so it's about living more simply. Yeah. And I'm starting another business, and I've got I've got a team of guys and gals, wonderful folks who are starting
mostly MBAs from Ivy League.
I don't always hire right out of the Ivy Leagues. We've got maybe 3 Harvard guys, a guy from Grinnell, and a girl from Yale who's just brilliant, probably the best on our team. But a lot of times I got a high school kid. He's got like a 400 IQ. So
he's your IT expert.
Yeah, he does everything.
Yeah. Sounds like you got everything dialed, man. And all your companies are green, sustainable, bio-organical, decompostable.
Say again. Sorry.
Oh, should I ask that again?
That's
okay, Brian, that's our first edit here. 4 minutes into this whirlwind. So all the companies and all the plants are self-generating, solar, bioidentical, biodegradable, sustainable, eco-friendly, rainforest contributions, profit.
Elon, he's a friend. And
do you light up with him on podcasts?
Can I say?
Yeah.
Sure.
Will you get in trouble from your investors or your stockholders?
No, they're laid back. But we were charging it up, and and he was like, what's a battery? At its essence, what does a battery do? And he's like, it's just a place to put power. But what if we just put it in something that's not a battery? It's just a place. So we're working on that for an energy source. So wait a minute. All right, enough with the shtick.
That was a stick, people. But I think it's getting to a very important point, because I know some of you were engaged wondering, wow,
how do they do this?
This guy thinks 40 houses is too much, but 22 is okay. What a bullshitter.
So a lot of times, and this is, when you started telling me about your podcast, Get Over Yourself, which I think is fantastic as a concept. I was like, if you're an avid podcast listener, you're hearing week after week after week about people who basically fell out of bed and landed in a pile of gold. And
otherwise they wouldn't be featured on the show.
Exactly. Right? So there's a
Hi, welcome to the Failure Podcast for struggling entrepreneurs who are in debt and behind.
Right. For people who went for their dreams and it didn't work out. It just didn't work out. It's for people. Podcasts generally are a very rarefied air, a meeting ground for the pantheon of demigods who seem to be incapable of doing wrong, except when they weren't able to swim, the English Channel on their first attempt.
They didn't make it back. They were going to do a double. They were going to do a double. They got pulled halfway across the second way due to currents.
I was going to climb Meru, but we just got slammed by the worst storm in 40 years. Not our fault, but second attempt, no problem. We did the unclimbable climb, and you hear enough of this, and the effect I think can be, well, gee, that's really exciting. They were able to do that, but I've done a bunch of stuff that just didn't work out. I wrote a book that didn't sell very much. I wrote a movie script, and it got made by somebody else. or just bad luck. Opening a business that didn't work, or having a relationship that you tried your best to maintain and it just fell apart at the seams. And I think that we're not hearing enough of the real stories of people who are not being blown by the felicitous winds that seem to be, blessing the sails of others.
Well, podcasts aside for a moment, before that, we were talking about mainstream media.
Right.
So you had even worse of a segmentation of only bright, shiny success stories, and they were on there for 6 minutes with their talking points, and then they were gone on the Today Show or wherever the celebrity or the success person appeared. So now at least we can, we're doing a little better to get real and authentic conversations. But you're right, when I started this show and named it accordingly with that spicy title, it is a little bit of a call to awareness that maybe we're just seeing the sunny side of the story, especially with social media, where what are you going to post?
Exactly.
Had another boring day, overslept, missed my job interview.
Right.
And now I'm rummaging through the fridge, and there's a picture of a disgusting fridge with beer bottles that froze and broke open. Inside joke, that happened last night. Sorry, Luke.
My fault. Yeah. We're not going to post things that are uninspiring. And I think that when we do construct these sort of quasi realities or pseudo realities, we're doing it for others, but we're also trying to convince ourselves that this sort of panoply of color that we're throwing up on the white screen for everyone to see as a representation of our lives is also a self-convincing an attempt to maybe construct in a kind of a dreamscape, collage how you would like your life to be. But I think secretly all this stuff, when we show, when a girl's showing her perfect butt, guys looking ripped, people taking pictures of their food. Here's me and my kids. A lot of it is good, genuine sharing. Like I'm enjoying this and I want you to enjoy it with me. But a lot of it is that we're using all of these things, success, financial success, business success, as proxy for when it really should be a propellant of having a successful business, having houses, having a better body, all of this stuff. What's behind it all, right? And I think, and research backs this up, this is not just a spiritual claim, but a psychological one, that the people who are happiest, however they get there, the people who are happiest have a network of fulfilling relationships where they feel significant and they can give back. And however it is you need to get there, you've gotten there. But I think that right now we're confusing the tools of success. Financial success is like a shovel, right? It's like a shovel that you use to hoe a garden, and then you grow tomatoes, and then those tomatoes grow, and then you make a sauce. You make a marinara. And then you invite friends and family over, and you have a big, wonderful dinner and have a little wine and great conversation. Well, the shovel is a tool. Right now, we're spending a lot of time polishing the shovel. It's a fetishism of the tool that gets you to where you want to get. So ultimately, it's the dinner with friends that we're all after. And if you didn't use a shovel, you could have used your bare hands, right? So all of these accoutrements of success, that's what is represented on the Instagram, the media, and often now it's polluting our conversations. Where if I'm going on a podcast, I have to tell you how everything worked out perfectly right off the bat. But the fact is, when we're happiest, think of all your happiest moments in your life. They're going to involve being around people. They're going to be around being valued in a relationship and having an opportunity to have enough success to give back. And by the way, this is something I'm learning myself the hard way, because as a ghostwriter for many years,
you're getting over yourself the hard way.
You kind of,
it's through actual experience.
It's been a tough lesson. In mythology, there's this ongoing, heroes theme, the Joseph Campbell stuff. In many mythological narratives, there's this idea of the hero going through a trial. Then there's after reluctantly being, chosen by the circumstances of life, by fate, to go off into the world and to accomplish something. But that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is when they return to the village and bring the gold of that experience, the wisdom of that experience, and to bring that back to fertilize the sort of consciousness of the community. That's the part where, like for me, for example, I've been a ghostwriter for years and helped a lot of people write books. And, my wife, Kate, says, when's the last time you've done a project that's just for you? And I thought, well, that's not what I do. I had this kind of service mentality that I took too far. And she's like, well, I think you really need to do something for you. And I kind of insist that you do. And the reason is because, if you're always just in service, if you don't balance it out, you haven't gone out of the village into that mythical trial to have new experiences and to do things for yourself and to grow and to do things that are to use the word selfish, that's for you. But then you take that experience, then you bring it back. So if you're always in a perpetual state of service and always doing things for others, you're not out anthologizing or collecting these flowers of experience that you can bring that whole bouquet back and say, look what I found. That's why healthy relationships rarely are one-sided, in terms of this person, works solely on behalf of another person's career. That's death. That's the death of a relationship. It's like, if someone becomes a famous motivational speaker and their husband or wife or partner goes all over the country with them, setting things up, helping them write their stuff, write their books. And let's see how long that lasts. And you would think that it could work for a time because, if the person's, they seem happy enough playing this role, but the partner who's doing the service solely never has the opportunity to go out and collect, these things and bring it back to the relationship. So that's been a tough lesson for me. Now I have to break out of this ghostwriting mentality and go, it is in fact, it might seem ironic, but it's your obligation on occasion to be selfish. And it's not a dalliance, and it's not self-serving in any kind of pathological way. It is absolutely necessary to the respiration of your own relationship with yourself.
I guess the parents of children could relate, because if you're completely absorbed in the helicopter parent, and this is going hand in hand with all this culture right now, and the social media and the projecting the success, and then living through your kids and having it be all about that, and even like Mia Moore says on her shows, putting the relationship first and the children second. So the children learn growing up that they're not the center of the universe, because then you're going to raise little narcissists.
Correct.
We had some talk about that at lunchtime off the air and how prevalent that is.
Right.
But if you can do that, that seems to be a win-win for everybody, especially the kids, seeing that they're not the center of the universe. But unfortunately, we're seeing the opposite, where the martyr, the harried soccer mom who's running herself ragged, not putting the airline mask on her face first. That's a common pattern. And then, in your career example, I think you want to be on a growth path at all times in your career. You want to be always pursuing the highest expression of your talents, reevaluating that. I was an athlete for 9 years. That seemed like a really long time. And I was getting stale and also getting my ass kicked. So those two things going together at the end served to mark the end of my career. And then I had to pursue new challenges. So we should always be in that kind of growth mindset.
I would, I would add to that. That is one scheme for a career trajectory, but it does presuppose a hierarchical relationship between the present and the future. So growth, meaning there's something in philosophy called the teleological error, and that is this idea that human beings represent a kind of a pinnacle of the evolutionary narrative. And it's like, in other words, all nature's been doing for the past 4 billion years since life existed on the planet is it's had this dream of humanity. And it took 6 biologic epochs to finally get it right. And now here we are. And now a UN report says that in 2040, the Earth is going to, bite back in a way it never has before, as a direct consequence of us being here and doing what we do. But the idea that we're sort of the end game, it's not to say that it's incorrect. To say it's one of a number of schemas. So if you were going to talk to a Buddhist monk, for example, who's doing spiritual work daily, and you say, well, when are you done? I mean, like when do you get the gold? Like who's the best? Who's the best meditator? I mean, I want to talk to the best one. Are we wasting time?
I'll pay extra for one-on-one.
I'll pay extra for one-on-one with the best one. I don't need this. If you're like number 2 or 3, I want. I got the money. I'll pay. But it presupposes a hierarchy, right? Of growth. So I wonder. I mean, I love that word growth, but it's also sort of. You could think.
I see where you're going.
You could think
you're getting back into that guy on the private jet with his 5th company.
Yeah,
it's like, is it necessary that you always have to one up? Do you have to transition from ghostwriter to prominent James Patterson name above the title to be considered successful, fulfilled, making a contribution, giving back?
Exactly. So
maybe not.
If I were in that private jet and I said, you know what, I'm donating all my money and I'm moving to Vietnam, and I've decided to just write about Vietnamese culture and to study the food and become a
grow
chef.
The mung beans.
I want to grow. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I mean, at like the end of Candide, right? Voltaire. What does he do? He returns to the garden, to the humility and to the literal growth, not growth in terms of rise. So this is definitely not a condemnation of improving one's career. I think it's a wonderful thing. But again, like we were talking about earlier, what is the function? Every time somebody talks to you, we were talking about when people bring certain kinds of terminology into language. Like right now, if I was to say to you, Brad, I'm going to kind of need you to, go up and get your suitcase, and I'm going to need you to go over here. I'm going to need you to go ahead and do the dishes because, I'm a little busy with this thing over. You'd be like, what, are you my boss? What's going on?
Did you say need 3 times in 12 seconds?
I did. Yeah. So what is the function of the function? Would be to kind of make a territorial claim about the disparity of a relationship and a power play, essentially. And if you didn't challenge that immediately, you would have given up a couple of feet of ground on that hill. So what is the function? What is if I meet somebody and I shake their hand and I say, God, you have really small hands for a man. Did you notice them? They're like a woman's hands. What's the function of that? Why didn't I keep that to myself? Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean to make a demeaning remark to you. And if you don't push back with what a big nose, then basically I've ceded that territory and said, I'm going to allow you to talk to me that way. There's a wonderful movie with Christopher Walken called In the Company of Strangers. It takes place in Venice. And a guy is touring Christopher Walken's house. Beautiful house in Venice, of all places. And he says it's kind of, the guy insults Christopher Walken, says it's kind of like a museum, because he's seeing all these old pictures of this. Here's this is my granddad. He's a great guy. And he makes this disparaging remark, and Christopher Walken in classic style kind of squints and looks, he gives the 1,000-mile stare, and then bam, punches the guy right in the solar plexus, brings him to his knees. And the idea there, it's a wonderful scene. The idea is, no, I will not be spoken to in that tone. And to recognize that the function of this guy saying this about his house was to insult Walken himself. And Walken was like, well, I won't have that. And here's my response. Bam, right in the gut. So to bring back to function, right? When we're talking about function, what is everything ask, what is its nature? What is its function in terms of its effect on my life and in my consciousness and my spiritual, I won't say growth, but spiritual, let's say vitality. And if you don't have an answer, what is the function of, why do I want this jet? Why do I want to grow my business? Why am I helicoptering my kid like this? What is the function? If you don't know, you got to stop and ask. If it's, I want my kid to be happy, you say, okay, you were mentioning, I think it's a great example. You brought up the helicopter parent. If you say, I want my kid to be happy, Well, you've seen the documentary, the wonderful documentary about the helicopter parents and several sports kids. There's a football player, tennis, golf. Great documentary about this.
What's it called?
What is it called?
Just the overly accelerated, overly
I think it's called Trophy
youth
Parents.
experience.
I think
Right,
it's called
Trophy Kids. It's by
Trophy
the
Kids?
guy that did the steroid documentary, the Bell brothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent documentary. You just came out with another that's very good. Seems like a very honest. I think that's talk about like how to make a documentary based on just not knowing when you go in and being honest and just laying it out. I think he does a great job. And that's a great doc. And if you ask the parents, what is the function of doing? Is this for you or for your kid? They'll say, I do everything for my kid, right? Isn't that always their answer?
Course.
Oh my God, I give everything to my, and like you were saying, when you give everything, it seems like you're saying you're giving a gift. But the reality is if you give everything, it's not a gift. It's a Trojan horse. And inside that horse is your ego. Never give everything. Not because you got to protect yourself, man. Got to look out for yourself. Look out for number one, you know?
You got to be the person you're going to be.
You got to be the center a little bit, you know? Watch out for your own career, dude. I mean, you know, and it's, okay, that's good practical advice, isn't it? But in reality, if you're really, really giving everything, and I had to look inward myself on this, why am I giving everything? And number one, because I cared and loved about the people I was helping and I was writing for. But if I was to be more honest, that there was inside that Trojan horse was my own fear of doing something completely for me on my own terms and just failing miserably.
Right. You're in a comfort zone as a prominent ghostwriter.
Yep.
You're getting highly compensated for it. So on many occasions, people can be bought.
Right.
Their dreams can be, you're
selling your dreams.
Suppressed or what have you, if you want to put that economic consequence in there.
Right.
Which I respect. I'm trying to raise a family and put kids through college. So It's like if you want to put a Nike tattoo on my forehead, I will probably name a price, and I would consider it. I would do it.
Right, right. You know, the old Churchill, apocryphal Churchill story where he says, "Would you sleep with me for $1 million?"
And
of course not. What do you think I am? And he says, "Would you sleep with me for $1?" And she says, I got it exactly backwards. "Would you sleep with me for $1? What do you think I am? How about $1 million?" And he says, "Well, we've determined." She says, "Yes." And he says, "Well, I guess we've determined what you are. Now we're negotiating the price." But is it, putting the swoosh on your forehead, it's like, again, if you do that, what are you trading in terms of your identity?
Yeah, it goes against all my belief systems. It's what I stand for, and the ink is harmful to my skin, everything else. But if we all might want to consider just the hypothetical question, what is your price? What price do you have to sell your values or sell whatever?
Right.
And when it comes even to, let's say, relationships and compromises, and you have these, let's say, and this is going into some Mia Moore show content, like we have relationship deal breakers. Like I don't believe in illicit drug use in my home or in my presence.
Right.
And so am I going to compromise on that? Well, I hope not. But it happens all the time where we compromise over and over and over our values, beliefs, morals, things like that in the name of whatever. Sometimes it's the Nike tattoo on my forehead because they're going to give me, $14 million or something. I'm going to give a lot of it to charity. So don't make fun of me if I have a swoosh on my forehead.
Well, see, there you go.
I have high-minded ideals for this check that I'm receiving.
I think you're bringing up something really, really important. And there's something about values I think we need to understand. Values, as far as I understand it, are not something you carry around in a satchel that you had when you were a kid, and then you don't open that bag and remove. You can open up that bag and hand over one of the values, and then you seal that bag up, you put the lock back on it, and you handcuff it to your wrist. Values are dynamic. They're a living entity with which we have a relationship. And that living entity needs to be fed or it dies. And you feed it through your actions. For example, if I originally had a value that I would, for example, ghostwrite for other people, but I would always keep a piece of myself for my own work. But then I found myself taking my passions for whatever it was I was doing, and shunting that water over to their project, so that their dreams became my dreams, their interests my interests, their intellectual curiosity became mine, often to the point that would supersede their own. Because that was my job.
Because you're a better writer.
Well, someone's got to do it, right? And if it's going to be a brilliant book, someone's got to be in the zone, and that ultimately boils down to somebody, typing words on a blank page. So here I had this original value in my satchel that said, always leave a part of yourself for your own passions. Always, follow, this thing for you. But through the action of, writing for others and doing and tossing it over to projects that were not originally my own, and then adopting them as a sort of an adopted child and loving it like a child and raising it like a child and taking on that responsibility. I realized that through those actions, when you open that bag of values up, you haven't opened it for years, but when you open it up, they've changed through your behavior. So there's a feedback loop. It's not like you have values you try to live by, and sometimes you compromise them, or you decide to make a rationalization. Like you said, I might be giving to charity, and so it's okay that I have the sweatshop swoosh on my.
It's better than 3 stripes going down my forehead. I do that on my abdomen for Adidas, though. Like Bruce Lee, that would be cool. In fact, I'll do the Adidas bid first. The forehead,
go with your yellow jumpsuit.
But yeah, the 3 stripes on my abdomen are for sale right now.
Wow.
To Adidas is my first prospect, and I'll put them in red, just like Bruce Lee.
They're crazy if they don't take you up on that.
I'll sell it for much less than a forehead spot. It's more affordable for Adidas.
I love it. So I think that when we think about our values, being this sort of abstract balloon that floats above us and follows us around in life, I think that every time we take an action, we're interrogating that set of values. We're feeding it different food, and we're interacting through our behavior, and that's a way of interrogating our values, of feeding it to see what thrives and what doesn't. That's why sometimes people say, I went to a party and I met this guy and I can't believe oh my God, I slept with him, or I can't believe I did this. I really regret, I had the chance to take this job, and all my instincts said to do this, but instead I took the one with more money. And I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? What an idiot. Why would I make that choice? We make choices that in psychology, there's something called the zone of proximal growth, or proximate growth, the zone of proximate growth. And the idea is that when you're teaching someone to play basketball, say, you don't immediately throw them in the court with Kobe Bryant because they'll never play again, right? You're going to be like, oh, well, this is no good. No, if you got a 5-year-old, kid who's, 4 foot tall, you're going to place him. What are you going to do? You're going to put him on an exactly equivalent player, or what?
If 7-foot basket, peer group. Yeah.
Right.
Appropriate challenge.
Let's say tennis, for example. When you want to become a better tennis player, what kind of player should you choose to play with? Who's your partner?
Someone slightly better than you.
Just a little bit better. The zone of proximate, just slightly better, growth, right?
That's Daniel Coyle talent code.
Yeah.
With the perfect practice, or the intense practice, whatever the term was. And that is making practice hard enough that you're making frequent mistakes and correcting, rather than if you're on the golf course and you're hitting a bunch of 3-foot putts in a row every time on a straight, flat green.
Right.
You got to challenge yourself. You got to throw down a $5 bill with your buddy and put stakes on it. That's Christopher Smith's commentary.
Yeah, stakes.
Also, make it specific to the competitive challenge.
Right. Putting
you out of your comfort zone a little. Yeah, but not $5,000 for this practice putt.
Yeah,
because then it's not going to foster improvement. You're going to be nervous as shit, and turn down. You're not going to go back to the golf course.
Right, and so when you play that with that slightly better player, as a golfer, there's an old saying, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So if you're putting, and your hand and your grip is not sound, and you're practicing that all day, you're making an error more permanent, right? And so putting ourselves in that zone of proximal growth helps to interact with everything we're doing, so that we don't make permanent those things that are not ultimately going to serve us, right? To solidify our faults. But when it comes to values, we don't often talk about values as a thing that we practice, right? So when we do things that are slightly out of character for ourselves, and we look back and say, why did I do that? Well, the reason we stepped out is that to interrogate our values and ultimately our identity by sort of probing it with a stick to understand the parameters of who we are, and by knowing objectively a little better, knowing what we want to change.
Did you do that stupid shit because your values were tied in a satchel bag for too long and you weren't exercising them like a muscle?
Yes.
And so you slept with that loser guy at the party on a motorcycle and rode to his house with no helmet because you haven't exercised boundaries and decision making where you put yourself into
and a little bit of a risk.
Right.
Yes, you've been living a little bit too safe, and you're subconsciously being directed to move just outside the border walls of your comfort.
Speaking of helicopter parenting, my friend reports he took his son over to his college frat house to show him around on a college tour. Check it out, the kids in high school. And he said it was disgraced. It was a pigsty. There's trash everywhere. There's a girl puking in the hallway. He almost tripped over her because he was looking at pictures, looking for his old heyday at the frat house.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, okay, so the helicopter parenting, doing everything for the kid, provided they get straight A's and get into the good college, right? Then everything's fine. They make all kinds of excuses and cover-ups for them. So they probably never had to pick up a pizza box in their own home and throw it in the garbage. So you go to the frat house where they're finally free from those constraints, and no one's going to pick up the pizza box for 90 days.
And what is okay, let's get back to what is the function. What might be, is it accidental?
I know, this writer is keeping us on track. I love it. We're tying back to the values and the function instead of going on weird tangents.
So if we look at it in one way, which is entirely correct, the idea that, like you say, is that the kid's just never been in the habit of picking up his own pizza box because Papa would do it or Mama would do it, and to clean his room, and all these things were just mysterious. The elves would come in the night and fix it. And then they go to college, like you say, and what do you know? All these spoiled kids are making an animal house of the place. But could there be a beneficial psychological function for that? Could there be a purpose for it?
I believe that the necessary rebellion from the tight constraints, and so they have to figure out for themselves that deep inside that satchel that's been tied shut, they have a value perhaps of living in a clean environment, but they need to discover it through trial and error, just like you ghostwriting one too many books. Exactly. So now you're giving me grief and expressing, you're venting that you haven't advocated for yourself.
Right.
And one guy ripped you off, famous health. We're not going to talk about that.
No. Yeah. Well, I've been ripped off a few times. And but by the way, what was the function of that? I mean, of my,
good.
Let's put the arrows.
Can we title the show, What is the Function? Because I feel like it was a beautiful phrase there we were talking about relationships at lunchtime. Right. And it's like, this person's treating me a certain way. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, for one example.
Right.
What is the function of what they're doing? What's the function of what I'm doing? Why am I walking on eggshells? Asking that question about almost any occasion in life.
Yes.
Give you some more clarity.
Right. So, there's an old mythological axiom that, many of the people that are brought into our lives are demons bearing gifts. And if you have somebody that's able to gaslight you, a narcissistic personality that puts you in a position where you're so afraid of abandonment or doing wrong or being chastised, or that you do swallow hook, line, and sinker another person's definition of your own identity, well, you can take this as a spotlight into the darkest regions of your soul, saying there are too many pizza boxes down there. You got to clean your room, So with every interaction that is ongoing like that, where you had when you had plot points of decision, whether to stay or to leave, for example, and you didn't, there's a reason for that. The function of the frat guys putting the pizza boxes all over the place is so that over a period of time they can go, I don't like living like this anymore. But I didn't really know that for sure. Ask any snowboarder or skateboarder or surfer or golfer or athlete of any kind, particularly those, dealing with risky acrobatic maneuvers. They'll tell you you are required to push, an Ollie Impossible or what was the, what I forget, when you spin around 3 times in the air after you go off the lip.
The Tony Hawk 900 on the skateboard.
Exactly.
There's a lot of scars and stitches to get there. Sean White, the same. The Mick Twist 1280 in the Olympics.
Yes.
Look at his compatriot, the guy that was the second-ranked snowboarder, and hit his head so bad that I didn't know if he was going to come out of the brain damage coma thing.
Amazing documentary about that too.
Yeah.
But the perfect example of when you say, why do these guys take such risks, that like you mentioned, could wind up in a life-changing concussion. But the fact is that the only way to know the limits of what you're capable of course, is to go past those limits. Comedians talk about it all the time when they say something that's a little off on stage and they get in big trouble. And they say, like Jerry Seinfeld has pointed out, he says, you need to know, that's the nature of comedy, that if you're examining the territory is safe, you're not doing comedy. What you're doing is pandering. Now, comedy means moving across that line and getting in a little trouble for it. And the funny thing is, we go to comics because we want to see how close they get to the line and then walk over it. And then when they do, we turn them into heroes of exploration, of thought, right? To say things that we couldn't say or couldn't have thought of because we wouldn't allow ourselves to go there. And then when they move over that line, the new move now, of course, is to after you build your icon, you destroy it, right? You give birth to a hero so that you can tie him at the stake.
Just in comedy, or are you making an analogy to other things?
In all things, we create icons so that we can tear them apart. This is true of the Kardashians.
Kendall Jenner, I was just going to say.
Yeah. Well, that's the prime example. I mean, we create this totem, and then like a Burning Man festival, we set it aflame. And the reason we build it in the first place is so that by proxy, we can explore those territories that they're willing to go, which in turn reflects something about who we are. So we're learning about our own boundaries and our own interests and our own values, which are always changing. And by the way, are not our own. That satchel that we talked about, that imaginary satchel, that has 1,000 handles on it. We all carry that satchel together. So, we have our set of individual values, but certainly like aspen trees look like individual trees, but in fact, part of a larger, massive organism. The mushrooms that in fact that are just the budding particles of a larger, our values are like the mushrooms. Those are the parts we can see. But under the ground, there is a kind of a central or a nervous system that connects us to all other people, and we're always exploring together and individually what our values are. Our values are like this. Like I said, it's a living thing, but probably a better metaphor wouldn't be that it's our own personal pet. It's more like a zoo, and we're all caretakers of that zoo. So I do think that many of the mistakes that we make are this exploration of the territory of our values and of our identity, both individually and as a community. And
then what is the function is to get me back into, let's say, my peak performance state, my center of power. I talk about this in my triathlon story, where I was a nobody in my first year training, having fun, glad to be outdoors and out of my stupid accounting job. And then I had great success at the very end of my first year, beating the top ranked guys in the world.
And I remember you had a shift to get to that.
I mean, it was just dumb luck and intuitive training because I was so rudimentary and unsophisticated. No one cared how I did. I had no pressure on me.
Right.
But as soon as I became a prominent name in the sport, having upset the great racers of this young rookie guy, all of a sudden I started to get serious and get more focused and more driven and more competitive and more measuring and judging my performance every day. And naturally I struggled. So all the things that served me so well to succeed wildly beyond my wildest dreams in a very short time, because I was just going with my natural abilities and intuitive training schedule, things sort of crashed down because I joined the measuring, judging forces of the modern world. And then I had to learn to get over myself. I mean, that's the inspiration for the podcast title, and learning that lesson.
When you didn't you mention that you were training so hard that you were not really listening to your body. You were breaking down.
Exactly.
And then when you
I have to get serious now, because now I'm a prominent guy and I'm getting paid by sponsors and people are inviting me across the world. Here's a free plane ticket. Come to my race because you're such an important guy. So I said, gee, I better not take a day off, even though my knee's sore and I got a little sore throat baking, where in previous times I would be like, oh, my body's not ready to go today. I'm going to lie down and go rent some videos because I'm not hot shit and nobody cares anyway. So I might as well have some fun and rent some videos instead of train. So the mindset changed due to the 1,000 handles on my values bag, as people are starting to measure and judge me now. Now I'm important. So now I better do things differently than what got me to success in the first place.
And that kind of, and so that gets us back to what we were discussing earlier about the difference between being an entrepreneur and being what we're going to coin
Luke's new word. Get ready.
A matrapreneur. A mat meaning love, right? And like an amateur means love of the game. So a matrapreneur versus entrepreneur, right? So an entrepreneur is the person who is mistaking the shovel for the dinner, right? This is the person polishing their trophy from a tournament they won 20 years ago, rather than being out on the course with their friends playing another round, even if it's not going to be, a perfect, 59, like Mickelson did in Kauai. I watched every shot. And I can tell you when he hit that 9-iron, I could feel the rumble under my feet. He's a strong dude hitting it out of 6-inch Bermuda. But, a entrepreneur says, I've won my trophy, or I have my jet, I have my successful business, I have these things, but you say, I am my business. No, you're not. And if you are, you're in trouble. You're in the thick. You're with the Mickelson in that 6-inch Bermuda, and you need to hit out of there, because your business, no matter what it is, it's good that you share an energy with it and an identity with it, but that's sort of like being connected to somebody as a conjoined twin. You share blood supply, but it ain't you. It is so closely linked to you. You can think that it is your identity, but the people who are most successful, and they speak this way. I mean, the richest people in the world, the Bill Gates and the Buffetts and so on, they get to a place where they say, none of this really is what it's about. It's about giving back. It's about doing good. It's about being feeling that I am contributing in a significant way. And
they say that when they're on top.
Once they're on top.
And the Google guys are my favorite example, where they didn't go public. They wanted to just build a better search engine, Make the world a better place. Is like, .com, go public, IPO. And then my friend Ray Sidney, who was the 5th employee hired at Google. I have a great show with him. And he was a mathematician, educated at Harvard, MIT, top level education, and going into this wonderful career opportunity that worked out very well for him. But he said, you know what? I wasn't a guy heading over to Silicon Valley to make money. I was a lifelong curiosity and passion for mathematics.
Right.
And that's something that people forget when they see the glorification of wealth. And of course, he's living the dream life that everyone dreams of.
Sure.
But he got there because of his passion for mathematics, and in his spare time, his hobby time was spent solving math problems with this organization that puts out, math problems to solve. And so if you can't pull that message out of the dream-like glorification of celebrity, now we're getting to something. But I was kind of knocking the big shot guys because it's so easy for them to say.
Exactly.
And now what I see is their message is being repurposed by the climbers,
right?
Because they know it sounds good to say,
yes,
I'm just here to be in service.
Right.
And so what my business is all about, I'm a ghostwriting service, and I look for celebrities to prey upon and extract a economic value to tell their story, because I'm such a skilled writer. And it's just all about being in service, and I don't need my name on the book. And it's sort of like, it seems a little disingenuous, even though they're trying, and I give them 5 points for trying. It's like, how about tell a little bit of the truth? Like, yeah, that kind of sucked that I didn't get any credit for that, because I was the one that opened up the Western region for all the new retail stores, and my boss took credit, and he's a jerk.
Right.
But I had a good time along the way. And there's got to be a little balance.
Such a great point, man, because it's right, like we were saying. If you're if you're operating or claiming to operate fully in the giving mode, that's a Trojan horse. And inside that horse is an ego, is your own ego. It's no different.
Say that without me breathing, because I want that to be the pull quote for the show.
If you say this about your kids, if you say it about your job, your friendships, I'm a giver. That's all. I just give. It's all about them. I give. Well, you're fooling yourself a little bit. And it is, by the way, it is the obverse of the coin of, the self-serving narcissist. Because if you say it's all about me, okay, well, there's a lack of balance. But if it's all about the other, so how are these distant cousins, right? If you're always giving, then and you see going out to get something for yourself purely to feed your own creative, artistic, professional soul, and if you see that as a dalliance that you can't afford because you're too busy serving, right? I have to serve my kids. I'm in the middle of serving everything, If you do that and you think that that's a selfless act, the reality is you're not leaving the village to go collect those things that only you can find. That's key to this. So, and this is what people can forget over time. And again, when we talk about values and identity being a dynamic thing, not a thing you carry around in a locked bag, it's dynamic. So you can't just think your way out of this problem. You can't say, oh, you're right, I should just, you know what? I am too much in this putative giving mode, this ostensible martyr mode. You have to physically go, no, I'm going to do something for me today. And, tough. You have to take the action because values are not an abstract thing. They interact with what you're actually doing physically as a behavior system in the world, right? So you actually have to start to do stuff for yourself. On the other end, you have the narcissist who never does anything for anybody but himself. And so he's always out collecting, but he never returns to the village. So he's essentially exiled outside the wall of the community. He's got his satchels full of mushrooms and flowers,
private jets,
and
homes.
It's all collecting. Stephen Wright, the comic, used to say, "You can't have everything. Where would you put it?" Which is a great line, but it's also true. If you have, if you find yourself, if you collect 5 jets, 10 jets, 80 jets, guess what? I own all the jets on the earth now. Okay, let's just say that I've really collected them all. Okay, now what? Well, I'm probably going to say, well, they're just sitting there and I have to pay for the upkeep, and that's not really great. Actually, it's kind of I wake up at night thinking of all these jets rusting and the maintenance and, what am I doing? I'm going to start renting them out, I'm going to rent them out. No, I should start selling them. This is nuts. Why do I have this many jets? So you start selling them until you're back to your one jet or no jets, and you go, God, I wish I had some. What I like is jets. And they start buying them again. And if
I miss my jets.
I want my jets back.
Jets. Yeah.
Once you're
jets.
I forgot that song. So it boils back down to what is the function of ownership. And if someone says, it brings me joy. There are people with massive car collections. And if you say to them, does this bring you daily joy? And they say, yeah.
Hell yeah.
There's the function.
Right.
Brings you joy. But like you say, these guys who, once they get there, say, oh, it's really all about giving. The good news is they did put their own mask, to use your metaphor. They put their own mask on first. So that's good. That's functional. In that, if you give before you got, what are you really giving? If you try to be in a service mentality before you have fulfilled yourself, you didn't put your own mask on first and you ran out of air. So they had the order correct. You got to get yours. Then you got something to give, right? And so their collection of all this wealth and success did put them in a position that gave them a bigger shovel so that they can dig a bigger garden and feed more people. If they were to do the giving first, do the giving first, then they would simply have the impulse without the tools to be really effective. So, I think people can make the mistake, of course, when they say, I'll give once I've reached, X level of success. That can be
Bill Gates.
You never get there.
He got pinned on 60 Minutes. This is maybe 20 years ago, maybe 25.
I think I remember this. Go ahead.
And I don't know who it was, Baba Wawa or somebody said, okay, so, by all accounts, you're the richest man in the world with $21 billion of net worth to your name.
Yeah.
And you have been called out recently for not giving squat to charity.
Yes.
And he looked at the camera to The Nation, the number one rated show, on TV for many years. And he says, oh, I'll be giving all of it away. But right now I'm busy building a software empire, and I'm not into that right now.
Right.
And I think he even maybe got criticized for that quip.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't you just spend $1 million and build a new park? Your old neighborhood's decrepit, whatever.
Right.
But sure, true to his word, he transitioned to the next phase of his life, and he's the all-time generous philanthropist of the planet.
Right.
Bill and Melissa or Melinda Gates.
Melinda.
Yeah. So I think that was a cool and honest and sincere answer.
Yeah. He had the order correct, and this is not a new concept in the the Vedic mythological stories, out of Hinduism in India. There are stories of the different phases of life, right? And there's the quest phase, and there's the the exploration phase, and all this. And finally, it's the teacher phase. Where you're in the you're to give back, but they have it in the right order. You gotta, and this, I think this can be a back and forth enterprise, right? Where you can collect for yourself, and you can be, an entrepreneur at the same time by loving what you do and bringing other people into the fold and giving people opportunities for new careers or whatever. There's things you can do to navigate through the world in a positive way while you're amassing your career trophies. But I do think it's a mistake if anyone out, in the world thinks that they are, 99% in the giving mode. And a lot of times it's their circumstance that is such that people are holding down 3 jobs and they have kids and they're like, I don't have a choice, but here's where your soul's really in deep water, is when you get so used to that, you forget that you want to get out of it. You forget that the end goal is to have something for yourself, and that those circumstances, have placed you in this kind of custodial role. You put that coat on for as long as you have to, but if you start to identify with it, you in order to rationalize those horrible circumstances, it's like, I'm working, 18 hours a day on 3 jobs and the kids and da-da-da. And then you can get to a point where you say, well, I'm just not me anymore. I'm just this service vehicle, and then now what? You've really lost hope. So, we do have to remind ourselves, I think, that no matter how much we're serving, you do have to get to a place where you're serving yourself for everyone around you. And that was a tough lesson for me.
So
still
is it a matter of striking the healthy balance at all times? And the follow-up question would be, is there some individual disparity here where we have some people who are going to be the ones more likely exploring the outer boundaries? Wasn't Elon Musk given a recent interview in the New York Times saying that he had cops to working 20 hours a day and sort of being in despair that his life is, accelerating at that pace, but he's compelled to do it and he's having trouble balancing. So he's like this explorer that might not be returning to the village too often, but maybe we need some of those. We definitely need some Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And then we need some Mother Teresa type thing. And then you're going to discover where you land on that spectrum. I mean, we need ghostwriters, man. And you're hitting those big picture objectives of being significant and giving back.
Yeah.
I mean, the book's a bestseller. It was read and changed lives of millions of people. Your name wasn't on the cover, whatever. Well, or in that case it was, but you've done great work, right? Does it necessarily, I see there's nothing wrong with it until you deem that it's time to move to a different realm. Yeah.
And ghostwriter is a sort of a metaphor for, I don't mean to and in a way, ghostwriting is a strange concept. I mean, how many ghost artists do you know? Ghost performers, ghost singers. There are ghost singers, right?
Well, how about James Patterson?
Right.
My friend works for him, PR and everything. He's the best-selling author of all times in history on the planet.
Right.
And one reason is because he puts out 20 books a year.
Books, yeah.
And it says James Patterson on the book.
Sure does.
But it's known and not a secret that he didn't pen it on his Electra typewriter looking out his window into the Florida coastline. Right. But it's okay. It's a James Patterson branded novel. And you'll even see the person who wrote it in smaller letters.
Yeah.
But it's just part of the branding exercise. And
right.
It's no harm, no foul to anyone.
Right. And we could live in a world where, we see a Jackson Pollock painting and it says Pollock, and then in tiny little letters it says,
Pollock Pines, California.
Mohammed, Rishni or someone.
How about the Cate Shanahan cookbook? Because on Amazon, we learned this, that legally you can use a pseudonym to write a book. It's not illegal. And you can title a book anything you want. Even you can title a book after another book. So I could write The South Beach Diet tomorrow by Bob Atkins or whatever, and no one can sue me. And so there was a book, the Deep Nutrition Cookbook by Cate Shanahan. Right. Not the Cate Shanahan who wrote the other book, who's a known prominent health expert. You can't even touch them.
Right.
They can just make money.
Exactly.
Because of your hard work.
Well, that
sounds messed up.
Let's get back to function.
What's the function of that bullshit?
I'll tell you what the function of that is. Okay. If I have a painting in a museum and it says, Degas, and underneath in tiny little letters it says, Frank Smith. Okay. What is the function?
Westport, Connecticut, October 2018.
If you've never seen a work of art before, it's your first time to a museum, you're a child. What do you take from seeing that? When you say, Mom, whose painting is that? It says Pollock. And she says, well, look underneath, right? Oh, is that who really did it? Yeah, he's a ghost painter. What's the function of that? Of having those two names? What does that tell the kid? What message is that meant to broadcast? That we have two names up there. And the big name is the person who didn't do it.
Learn a lesson in branding at a young age.
What's the lesson?
Branding and marketing.
What does it tell you about art?
I don't know. It's for sale.
Okay, it's fungible. It's a commodity. Yeah, it's for sale. Okay, good. So now we're talking about like a Thomas Kincaid, right? You pump them out. Okay, great. So does that value the art and the artist, or does it devalue it as does it intrinsically, it puts a monetary value on it, but what does it say about the production of art?
Yeah, it's a good question because, Thomas Kincaid would probably answer that he's exposing the beauty of art to a broad audience, and any snobby artist who refuses to sell their work, or they don't paint on acrylic, even though it's the better medium because they're so connected to their art that no one gets to appreciate it.
Sure.
That's not, maybe not contributing as much to society as Thomas Kincaid blasting those things out to everyone's living room. Sure.
And of course that presumes that Kincaid paintings are a contribution. Which, to many people they are.
Good point.
To many people they are.
It's kind of this is watered down culture okay? And I would say my knee jerk response would be, yeah, it is, because it's better than nothing. You can't be sitting in snobbery where I only play on private golf courses with the greens on a stimp meter of 11 or above. Yeah. That's a really fast, slick, well cut green.
Only 3-star Michelin food will do. Where if a single micro sprouted radish is misplaced, I have to send it back. Yeah, no one wants to become
like J.P. Sears with his gluten intolerance.
Exactly, right? Yeah, it's so much fun to send things back. What is the function, by the way, of sending something back at a restaurant? When somebody says, no, this is no, let's say it's a pretty decent meal, but it's just a tiny bit off. I wanted this a little more well done.
You have small, dainty looking hands too, Mr. Waiter.
I do.
Yeah.
What's the function of
same function as commenting on the baby hands?
Yeah, it's a power play. Absolutely, it's a power play.
And so what's the objective of the power play? So the function of sending food back, the power play of sending the food back, a la J.P. Sears with his gluten-laden pizza.
Great example.
I don't know what's the answer.
Yeah, the function is, well, first of all, when I say to the waiter, excuse me, I don't mean to be a bother, but, okay, everyone at the table, where are their eyes? Where are they looking?
At the bother?
at the person making the bother. So first of all the tension's on me, which is key. Second of all,
that's key to the whole plan.
That's absolutely key. Second of all, I'm taking this person, this waiter, is working. She works hard for the money, right? And showing them I'm in a position. I'm paying good money. I want to put them in a subservient position to not only bring me food, but to bring it back and to bring it back again. And I'm also saying a little F you to the chef. Now, again, there are legitimate reasons to send something back, right? I'm talking about that persnickety, and come on, people, we all know who we're talking about. There are people who just want to be this bother. And you go, why do they do that? Well, it's to give themselves a little more attention and to make them feel, a little more important in the world. Okay, what is the function of that? Why are they in particular doing that? Why do they have the need to do that? Let's look at that person a little more closely. Well, because they don't feel very valued and satisfied and significant in their world. They don't feel that they are a person of significance and influence.
Until they are getting served, then they use that
They
leverage.
grab it where they can. And why don't they have that? Go back to their childhood. And
Ages
go back
3 to 5.
Let's go back to 3 to 5, where their parents were either helicopter parents who turned them into a fetish of their own egoistic, unfulfilled needs, or plainly emotionally abandoned them, which sent the message, had the function of telling the kid that they were secondary to the importance of the identity of the parents in any real way. So they're going to go around for the rest of their life creating chaos, sending food back, being a bother, and essentially taking all the arrows of attention and bending them with the force of 1,000 Rhesus monkeys back toward their own identities. All eyes on me.
Those who have just joined us in our live studio audience, our theme seems to be, what is the function? We keep coming up with that, and how you can ask yourself that in so many different occasions in life. Yeah. Now I want to ask you at the restaurant, as my girl Mia Moore knows, I'm like the opposite character, where I just eat. I didn't, they didn't put the cheese on, and they forgot the avocados. It's cool. I'll just eat it. It just certainly looks like a good meal.
Right.
But I don't want to be a bother to the extent that I really don't want to be a bother.
Great. I'm so glad you brought that up. Okay. Remember how we were saying that values are not a dead load of bricks in a satchel.
With 1,000 handles.
1,000 handles. The whole community carries this together. And by the way, talking about that 1,000 handles, in there are our values, but if we conjoin those values, if those values are associated with or respire with or conspire with our identities, that bag with 1,000 handles also has our identities, both individually and our community identities. So in the case of, I'll sit here and eat the food, remember how we were saying that your values are not something you just think up in your head, but it interacts and is dependent upon your behavior in the world. When you say, I'll just sit here and eat, I specifically asked for no cheese. They brought it with cheese. I'll just scrape it off. I'll do it. I'll eat it. I said, no onions, here's onions, and so on. I'll just eat it. $40 for the plate, but I'll just eat it. Okay. When we talk about our values and how what we do feeds back into our values, how will this act of you eating this meal that you're not going to enjoy, you'll pay for it, but you're not going to enjoy it. What is that going to do to your values? Your value about who you are, your identity. How will that feed that the act of eating what you don't want to eat that you're about to pay for? What will that do to you, to your values regarding yourself?
Sprinkling some dust into the bag, whereby I'm a go with the flow kind of guy, and I'm not one to make waves. And so I do that 178 more times, and then we apply a real life important example, like the interactions between my boss and I, and taking heat and taking emotionally abusive commentary, or in a relationship dynamic where I'm always the one that compromises when we're trying to decide between sushi and Italian or what have you.
Excellent.
And you start mixing that stuff into your bag.
Okay. So if you're going to take a test tomorrow, and the test is called B.rad, okay? There's a test about you. You're going to have to study up on you. I want you to memorize you. I want you to memorize all these different aspects of your character as it exists today, as a snapshot of B.rad in the here and now. And we're going to take a test tomorrow. As with any test, and we're taking this test every day, by the way, or we're preparing for this test every day. So how do you memorize? How do you study for a test? Let's say you're going to take a Spanish test tomorrow. How do you study? What do you do?
Buscar para los flashcards durante del noche, practicando con mi amor.
Exactly.
Otras veces escuchando para los podcasts en español.
Yes, right.
So buena ideas, los tres.
Right. So, and you do it in different places, right? And so you'll study here in your bedroom, you'll study in the living room, you'll go to a park and study because research shows them that the different places that you study it actually aids the memory. If you try to memorize it in the same place, under the same circumstances, at the same time of day, it's not as effective as if you try to memorize the same thing in a variety of environments, because you're creating a more sophisticated network of memory channels in your brain. Doesn't that make sense?
What's up, college students? Are you listening? That's a great insight.
Oh, yeah. Never study in the same room every day.
Of course not.
Because guess what? The test isn't going to be in your bedroom. So you have to train your brain to approach the contextual interaction with the thing you attempt to memorize in a different context. And
just
then
like the golf example.
Exactly.
Yeah. You get the driving range with a clean mat.
Yeah.
Or you go out and throw a ball in the mud and try to hit that shot.
Exactly. And so what you do is you practice it in order to make it permanent, right? Okay, so when we go to a restaurant and we eat the thing we don't want to eat, and then the boss speaks us to a way that is, we shouldn't, and then we go through life acting out over and over. What you're doing is memorizing the fact that you're not valuable. You're studying for the test. And the question on the test will be, what is your value and significance? And the correct answer in this case is nothing. I have no value. And you want to make sure you remember. And to remember it, don't just think about it in your head. Go out there and live that way. Eat that meal you don't want to eat. Have that person speak to you in that tone of voice that is absolutely deplorable, that crushes you. But take it and say, I've got the bigger shoulders. I don't need to. You are memorizing, just as with any other, like with mood. It's now known that if you're depressed and you don't do anything to crack out of it, you're memorizing depression. You're studying for the test of depression. You're going to pass with flying colors. So this is the interaction of the physical behaviors that we do and our values. This is what makes values a living, dynamic creature that you're feeding. What do you want to feed it? And if you're feeding it one more meal that you don't want to eat because you ordered it without cheese and they didn't listen, you're sitting down to study for that test of your own devaluement. Stop studying for it.
You're sounding like Jocko now. All we need is the graphics.
Jocko.
You're studying for a test on yourself.
You're going to fail. If you listen.
That's heavy, man, because I think we talk our way out of it too much. My stated values are blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And then every day I go through life compromising my values over and over.
Yes. And in fact, there have been studies that show that if you want to make a movie, if you want to write a novel, if you want to start a business, don't talk about it, because it fulfills that part of the brain that is satisfied by the completion of the act.
Right.
So
I'm at Starbucks and what are you doing over there? I'm working on a novel. Oh, really? That's so interesting. Tell me. Blah, 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 blah. And then, hold on, let me close my laptop so I don't drain the battery while I talk about the thing I should be doing.
And in your mind, you are getting a release of satisfaction that is proximal to the same release you would get if the deed had actually been accomplished.
Would Dr. Cate Shanahan say you're getting that dopamine hit from a chemical perspective? Okay. That you're just talking about your novel gives you the same, a certain approximate proxy satisfaction to actually doing it?
Yeah, that sounds totally valid. And also what it also does is it alleviates the anxiety of not having done it, right? Like you kind of, to get anything done, anxiety plays a positive role.
What's the function of anxiety?
It helps you, motivate you to get stuff done. And if you talk too much about something you plan on doing, then you kind of totally lose that positive anxiety that drives you.
What about if you do like a social media posting? Does that count too? Training for my marathon.
I think it does. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it depends what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to become more socially popular, then you're actually getting somewhere with that. But if you're trying to like exercise, then obviously it can, it's a big question mark.
Right. Got it. And I'm glad you brought up social media, because I think okay,
we're going full circle now. We're about to wrap it up, and this is part 1 of a 10-part Luke Shanahan podcast series. But just we're getting deep, man. I appreciate this show. I'm bringing a lot of real life examples into play, especially the restaurant one. It's, are you that persnickety person that sends a meal back twice?
Right.
And you're so polite and sweet about it, which is maybe a bullshitter. Maybe it's a bullshit element too. Maybe not.
I'm sorry. I'm
sorry
I don't
again.
Want to be
it got a little cool while I was waiting for you to fix the thing. And then what about the other person that's going to eat whatever they stick in front of you, despite paying $40? That's something that takes some serious reflection here, and how that plays out in other areas.
And a lot of it boils down to, when you see the person sending it back, right? Our presumption is often, wow, what a what, but
evolved person.
But at least they really have a healthy ego. They knew who they are, and they're not going to take another cold plate. If they have to send 5 bottles of wine back, they'll do it. And man, if I had, I don't want to be like that, but if I had 10% of that in my veins, and the presumption is that person is very comfortable with themselves, but I don't think that's often the case. If
it's an overreaction or a compensation.
It's a compensation. And the other person also, then we're back on talking about people being the obverse of the coin, right? The obverse of that is a person who just swallows the meal down, thinking that it's the right thing to do. And this is something Cate's taught me, is that when you swallow that meal down, I'm not the only one who suffers. See,
the restaurant itself suffers because they're getting away with it.
No, Kate suffers because I'm fucking miserable. Oops.
Oh,
can I swear?
Of course you can. This is a podcast.
Yeah. No, yeah. If
If you don't face stuff in life, you turn into a passive aggressive, slippery slider.
At least when you're passive aggressive, there's still a little fight in you.
Yeah,
when you move past passive aggressive and there's no aggressive,
just passive.
They say that depression, is rage turned inwards.
Mm-hmm.
And if you constantly practice, like we're saying, if you physically go through the practice of reaffirming to yourself and to those around you that you're worth nothing, that you're worth value, now you're fobbing your character onto another person, and that character represents self-loathing, depression, sadness, and a feeling of no value. And that's not a gift
to anyone.
Even
not to
yourself.
All the people you're serving, helicopter mom and martyr of the workplace.
Right.
Yeah.
We were talking about, just to get back to the ghost painter and the function of that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's the final answer there?
Everything around us has a function to tell us something about who we are. We know that the so-called great architecture of, say, Washington, D.C. was specifically engineered to strike terror into the hearts of those who would come to visit it, the indigenous folks who would be brought there as a sort of a display of power. There have been, like Mussolini and other fascist movements who deliberately created stark, stunning, monolithic architecture meant to remind the people that they are simply cogs in a wheel, fungible, replaceable, valueless. If you're raised, say, in the inner city, in a deplorable looking, sad, functional building with very little greenery around, that's a message, isn't it? And a food desert with no interaction with nature, that's a message. And they hear it loud and clear. And the message is, you have no value. Versus a person who walks into a beautiful, large architectural masterpiece. And if you live there, the message you hear every day by what you see is, you're important. You matter. And that feeds in. So everything around us has ultimately does have a function. Even if that function is an emergent property, if it wasn't planned out for the beginning, it still becomes a function in terms of messaging, in terms of the way it makes us feel about ourselves and how we interact with others. So if you had a painting with with Pollock in the big letters and in the little letters, the guy who actually painted it, the function of that is to say, art's not that important. Anybody can do it. And that's why, by the way, we have ghostwriters, but we don't have ghost dancers. Because if you go on a plane, what as a ghostwriter, you sit next to a guy who wants to do a novel, what do you hear? Tell me. What
do you hear?
What do they tell you when they strike up a conversation? You say, I'm a writer. What do they tell you?
They talk about their novel.
The novel they're going to write, or the novel they want you to write for them?
Oh, I don't know. It's never happened.
Oh, I have it happen all the time. I'd write it myself. I'm just too busy. I'm a surgeon. I'm an architect. I'm a personality. I'm this and that. I run my own business.
You must sit in first class more than I don't know.
Yeah, in the old days. But no, Kate's shaking her head. No, we do not. No, we're in the we're up in the luggage bin. But yeah, Kate carries me around in a cat carrier. Meow. But save money. But yeah, what you hear is, you should write it, or I wanted to. The idea is that because everyone can eat, everyone can run a restaurant. So what do you see? A lot of people starting restaurants, they shouldn't, right? That's why the failure rate on restaurants is what? 90%, something like 95. So everyone can speak, so everyone thinks they can write. When in reality, writing is nothing more than thinking on the page. And the thinking represents, like, with Deep Nutrition, Cate and I wrote it together. We both are very, scientifically minded and all that. So it's a good collaboration that creates something better than the two of us could have done individually. But it is a weird concept, the idea of, and what it says, the idea of ghostwriting is that that writing is kind of a profession, but not really. And I'm not saying, and by the way, is this a gripe? No, maybe that's the case. The marketplace has spoken. But if you don't believe that in your heart, say you are a ghostwriter and you go, I'm not going to swallow that pill anymore. I think that writing is more than just something anybody can do. I think I'm better at it than most. I think I'm really good at it. And if you decide to live that value, and that's a good phrase, to live your values, to take those values out of that dusty satchel, to take the lock off and to bring them out in the sunlight, and exercise them and feed them and take them out for a walk. What you're doing in this case is saying, no, this is, and by the way, again, writing is just a metaphor. People might be thinking, well, I'm not a ghostwriter, but my creative energies are being usurped. They're being dedicated more to others than to myself. And again, on the enterprise, or at least the claim that you want to be giving and giving back and all that. But like we said, that's a bit of a Faustian relationship with your own identity, because if you give and give and give until you're an empty vessel, you're not really giving anything. What you're giving is an empty package, or like we said, a Trojan horse that's got nothing in there but your own ego, which has been a tough lesson for me. And I'm a work in progress.
Work in progress. Luke Shanahan finishing up strong with a lot to think about for everyone listening. You're coming back on. We're gonna pick up the conversation on part 2.
Far out.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, live audience, for your contributions.
Yeah, good job, guys.
Dun, 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 dun. Thank you for listening to the show. We would love your feedback at getoveryourselfpodcast@gmail.com. And we would also love if you could leave a rating and a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a hassle. You have to go to desktop iTunes, click on the tab that says ratings and reviews, and then click to rate the show anywhere from 5 to 5 stars. And it really helps spread the word so more people can find the show and get over themselves, because they need to. Thanks for doing it. Hey, how about a backwards commercial? Are you ready? So, go to Organifishop.com and enter the discount code B.rad for 20% off your order. That's ORGANIFI shop.com. Why would I do something as silly as a backwards commercial? It's because I'm positive you have to try this stuff. Trust me, order some now. It's going to change your life. Organifi is an organic superfood supplement company. They're known for their greens. You take them when you travel, get all your nutrition. But I like their top secret, Organifi Gold, warm relaxation beverage. This is the single best tasting tea you will ever try in your life. So if you want something soothing, delicious, nutritious at the end of your busy, productive day, pour yourself a scoop of Organifi Gold. What's in there? Turmeric, the anti-inflammatory superstar, is the base. And then, listen to this, smooth coconut milk, cinnamon, ginger, lemon balm, and 2 super mushrooms. It's legit. It's delicious. Check it all out at Organifishop.com. And don't forget to put in B.rad for 20% off. Try Organifi Gold. If you're not totally satisfied, send it back to me and I'll keep it.